If elections are about choosing leaders, then why do some presidents win again and again? For 30 years, 35 years, and even 40 years. Every 5 years, ballot papers are printed and election observers are invited. Votes are cast, and yet the same man always wins. Not because the people in that country never changes their mind, but because the system, the electoral system, is designed so that the people's voice does not matter. In this video, ladies and gentlemen, we explore 5 common ways in which authoritarian presidents rig elections, not with the tanks on voting day, but with the systems that are built long before even the first vote is cast. Remember, this is not about one country and this is not about one election, but this is all about patterns that have been identified by political scientists, election observers, and democracy watchdogs across Africa, Asia, and beyond. So if you recognize your country here, that recognition is the real point. Number one is the capture of state institutions. The first trick, ladies and gentlemen, is very simple. Control the referee. In any democracies, ladies and gentlemen, the electoral commissions are always independent. The police protects the people, and the courts controls or checks the abuse of the law and power. But in any authoritarian system of leadership, things are done upside down. The president appoints everyone, the court answers to the president, and the police protects power and not people. In this case, ladies and gentlemen, when disputes arises, the electoral body always says we do not have a problem, and the court says the process was legal, fair, and the police says disperse immediately. This way, the process looks legal because legality in itself has already been captured by the incumbent president or government. Number two, ladies and gentlemen, is media domination and information control. In these authoritarian states, elections are not won on the voting day, but it is won in the mind. And authoritarian leaders understand this very well. All state TVs are used as official campaign channels for the incumbent president, where the opposition is suppressed, labeled as the enemy of the people or the enemy of the state, and sometimes denied airtime, ladies and gentlemen. All this is done to make sure that the citizens do not hear of the alternative opinion from the opposition. So if the citizens do not hear of the alternative, then it is very difficult for the citizens to imagine of any change. Number three, ladies and gentlemen, is intimidation and repression of the opposition leaders. In any authoritarian state, ladies and gentlemen, elections are marred by fear and not persuasions, like in any democracy, ladies and gentlemen. The opposition and their supporters are always faced with arrest, beatings, and sometimes surveillance and job threats. Ladies and gentlemen, their rallies requires them to get permits, which are never approved most of the times, ladies and gentlemen. And at a time as we are talking, ladies and gentlemen, police and military officers are always deployed to flood their rallies in towns where they are holding rallies. This is not to protect the voters or the people, ladies and gentlemen, or the supporters, but this is to send a message to the supporters of the opposition and the opposition themselves that we are watching you. That's why we are saying that a controlled or a frightened, a threatened voter is already a manipulated and a controlled voter. Number four is the manipulation of the rules of the game. In many authoritarian leaders, ladies and gentlemen, election rules are changed, the constitutions are changed, and term limits are eliminated, and age limits for the president is also eliminated from the constitution. When the constitution is interfered, ladies and gentlemen, the entire process remains interfered with. The last one on the list is election day and post-election day manipulation in many of these countries, ladies and gentlemen. In many of these countries, ladies and gentlemen, on or before the day of the voting, there is ballot stuffing and also delayed result announcement to allow for any manipulation and also inflated turnout figures. The turnout may be low, but it has to be inflated to make sure that the desired numbers of the already desired winner, who is the incumbent, is already achieved. And sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, many observers are blocked from their way. President Yoweri Museveni is best understands this very well, and he has been practicing it for the last more than 40 years. He has been in power. This is Siasa 360. My name is Jacob Niente. Kindly consider subscribing to this channel to support us. Until next time, bye-bye.